Hello, my name is Regnoy, also known as Young Streaming, and I am here today to talk about corporate brainrot. As you can see, we have quite a bit to go through here, 614 slides, so let's get started as quickly as possible. The premise of what we will be talking about is a rising problem in the business world. As mentioned before, corporate brainrot. I have been thinking about this for many years now, and this presentation will cover what it is as a whole or a subjective term, 50 symptoms of it, and maybe even what we can do to fix some of these. I will also do my best to attach real-world examples to each symptom. What is corporate brainrot? It is a dangerous and possibly even terminal disease that affects a person's ability to think rationally within the corporate space. The victim becomes subjected to copious amounts of greeds, echo-chambered ideologies, and a complete loss of independent thought. It is important that we are able to differentiate between standard greed and bad business decisions, and people who are suffering from this very real and life-threatening disease. Unfortunately, I did not invent this. It is not a completely unique concept or original. I posted the earliest source of the term that I have found online from the internet below. Outside of that, it seems that I am the first person to be talking about this blight in such definition and detail. I do not want to steal credit as much as I would love to take it all. Or I do not want to steal credit as much as I would love to have taken it all. The importance of identifying the difference between brain rot and greed. While it might sound like a trivial difference, you need to be able to tell these two apart for many reasons. For instance, when it comes to your coworkers and bosses, regular greed can be reasoned with. You can explain to them the error in their decisions by appealing to it. Tell them the long-term ramifications of their actions, how it will lose the money, or the unlikelihood of making any money in the short term. And for investing, needless to say, you should be able to assess the leadership and behaviors in any company you want to seriously invest into. Incompetence and or corporate brain rot is unforgivable. The sin of greed should drive them to take their decisions seriously so they can make as much money as possible. This is the driving force of capitalism, after all. Whereas corporate brain rot won't listen to reason. They will make the same mistakes over and over and over again. There is no helping them. They are simply incapable of change until they see the issue, which they almost never do. Everyone makes mistakes. Brain rot leaves a long trail of them, although it is not always easy to find. So, I have labeled each symptom of corporate brain rot from weak to medium to high, very high, and finally terminal. Weak symptoms can be found anywhere or in anyone. Philosophies or practices that are somewhat reasonable or understandable, but still bad and cross lines. A warning sign of corporate brain rot, you could say. Be aware. For medium, the brain rot is manifesting. Reason and their grasp on moral reality is strained, and their mushrooms are starting to take root in their heads. You should get some fumigation for that. High, inarguably brain rot. They have lost the plot and are quickly losing their ability to think for themselves. Their only remaining thoughts are modish, likely coming from a guidebook or superior, which will be followed to a fault. Very high. The brain rot has evolved to have its own thoughts. The rot will now feed and cannibalize everything in its path with no sense of self-preservation, relying solely on external forces to keep it afloat. And finally, terminal, black, completely unsavable. It has reached its final form. The hunger is satiated, and its final mission is to kill itself and take as many people and companies along with it. Disclosure. Each of these symptoms, that's a typo there, are being pulled from a notebook I wrote in during class. They have not been organized in any way, so there will be similar examples close to each other, and the degree of the rot will vary greatly. Some terminal symptoms will be at the front, and some incredibly trivial, aka weak, symptoms will be at the end. I have been naturally organized them from intensity to some degree, but for the most part it is random. Do we have any beginning questions about anything? I will pause for a minute or two now to see if anybody has any. Does not seem like we do, so I will move on. Number 1, self-destructive PR priorities. Brought to you by Visa. This is among the most obvious and powerful symptoms of corporate brain rot. I was originally going to use Sweet Baby Incorporated or another company as a reference for this one, but just as I was reaching the end of writing this presentation, the credit card censorship scandal dropped. Sorry, 1 second. Just a minor technical difficulty, my bad. Okay, we're back. It wasn't the fact, there he is. It wasn't the fact that they did it that drove me to do this urgent rewrite. It was how many articles and streamers were reporting it as a bad precedent when this kind of crap has been going on for years. Credit card companies refusing to let people spend money on what they wanted because it makes us look bad. I rewrote this to let people know that this is far from the first time they've done this, however. It's been a pattern of behavior that is only making the news now because they did it to Valve, in what is probably their stupidest action of this kind to date. They've done this before to other companies, websites, and even industries. Entire websites like MangaZ were shut down because payment processors, notably JCB, the Japan Credit Bureau, pulled out, withheld payments that were already made, and they could not afford to pay the server costs because of this. They had been up for 14 years and officially closed, or at least suspended the service, on November 26th of last year. Similar stories have happened to Pixiv, Denpasoft, Fentia, Deosite, and countless more. I highly suggest looking into this on your own time. It's very interesting. This symptom manifests itself in many different ways, most of them fairly obvious. For example, firing employees for posting harmless memes or forcing them to publicly apologize for a joke your customers enjoyed, aggressive copyright strikes on fan projects and stories, harassing, challenging small groups that oppose you, shout out to Sweet Baby Incorporated and YouTube. And this featured IRL example is brought to you by Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, etc. By the way, if you know each one of these real-life examples that were listed here, because they were pulled from real-life examples, I suggest you might maybe need to get off the internet for a little bit. Number 2, public image is for sale. Brought to you by Comcast. Companies prioritize their public image, many to an unreasonable degree, but there are certain ones that will sell their public image for quick, short-term profits. They sell their image in different ways. Number 1, through bad partnerships. Number 2, through poor investments and products. Number 3, scams, i.e. breaking products and broken products, repoing purchases without refunds, and scandals. For the featured example today, providing awful service and quality and lying with discounts until your brand name becomes synonymous with horrible quality and greed. Thank you, Comcast. Number 3, make big number go bigger. Brought to you by Marvel. The number is only ever allowed to go up, never down. This example is a bit of a weaker one, indicated in the upper left corner saying weak, as making money is the purpose of a company. However, being unwilling to accept losses of any kind, refusing to take pay cuts, or that you had a big temporary success or a good year is a very problematic mindset once it hits a certain degree. It becomes a problem when someone starts trying to play catch up with last year's big success with unsustainable or unreasonable methods. For example, making an unreasonable amount of shitty movies to imitate the financial success of a very profitable film, or reviving properties that have long since lost their spark. Now, I'm not entirely opposed to making more smaller budget movies to make up for a really big one. I think that's a very sustainable, very fun idea. Not when all of them are very bad. That becomes very bad. Number 4, stocks and shareholders are the most important people on the planet. Nobody's going to be offended by this one. I really doubt it. But brought to you by United Healthcare. Prioritizing shareholder interests is a common and reasonable action of companies. As someone who's involved in the market, albeit on a smaller scale, I do appreciate when a company I have invested in does well. Don't screw everybody else in the world to make me or 1,000 people in an office the most amount of money possible. I would much rather have a healthier economy, culture, and workforce than a few extra cents on your stock price when I sell it. Ooh, I bet I offended every stockbroker on the planet with that one. Big companies invested in products, amenities like electricity, insurance, housing, automobiles, and so on are part of livelihoods of millions of people. They know this, and that's why they all operate the same, like what happened with the gas price wars. They used to lower them to compete with each other until they realized that they could all just raise the prices together, and it would all just come down to location, location, location. Number 5, listening and adhering to people not in your industry. Brought to you by Wizards of the Coast. Companies will often hire outside consulting firms for things like PR, business optimization, internal investigations, and new ideas. As a standard, hiring consulting firms is a good idea. Get fresh perspective on things. However, that's in theory. In practice, the problem is that some of these companies, consultants, or even worse, investors don't have the right insight, your best interests, or even the most basic understanding of your industry in that order. For starters, starting with today's featured guest, Wizards of the Coast. They hired an outside HR consulting company to investigate their company for problems, such as things that would give them a bad brand image. However, when they didn't find anything, they invented one in the Kaladesh set, saying that the Kala in Kaladesh means black, which is racist when mixed with Desh for country. Kala translates to hundreds of words. I know, I've looked into all of them, such as tomorrow, art, virtue, time, destiny, and fate. Nobody else made that connection. I actually had to confirm that Kala meant black. They did this because they don't get paid or get paid as much money unless they find a problem. Nobody wants to pay somebody to tell you you're all good to go, which is a systematic flaw with hiring companies like these. Number 2, some consulting firms do not have the slightest clue what they are talking about. They are too preoccupied with their own agenda or will actively lie and gaslight investors, clients, and even the public to promote it. React streamers, you know them. You love them. Name one. Make my job a little easier and pause the React to explain one for me. I even mentioned a prime example earlier for you. Number 3, I will get into an example of these dishonest quacks later on, but there are some absolutely disgusting or retarded folks out there selling their advice to companies by telling them what they want to hear. Kind of like the news. There are also numerous investors that will leverage their investments and shares over companies' heads to force them into making terrible business choices for short-term profit so they can dump their stock, cash out, and leave them sailing towards the iceberg. To quote Liam Neeson in Commuter, good movie by the way, on behalf of the middle class, fuck you. Number 6, overstaffed bureaucratic roles when you have starving front lines. Overstaffing bureaucratic positions does what most of you think it would. It makes everything slower, less efficient, and harder than it has to be. It is also a lot more expensive as you're paying these people management and administrative salaries for interfering with productivity and development. For some people, this is worth the trade-off of what they get, which we will get to soon. But for most of the workforce, it just makes everybody's life worse. There are a few reasons why companies do this. None of them are good, but some are worse than others. For starters, the friend group reverse optimization and filling the cracks with glue. The friend group is when a company will sometimes make jobs for their friends. This can lead to many management roles that all overlap with each other. It's not a huge thing trying to help your friend or wanting to work with them, but it does make a small money pit and can make things more difficult for others when everybody has to go through everybody to get something simple done. Like adding one box on a piece of paper. I'm not joking about that. Although it is a pretty funny a comedy show called Superstore. Check it out. Number 2, reverse optimization. Massive companies can and do create departments, regular meetings, or new bureaucracy to optimize efficiency. It's a good idea in theory, but often makes simple tasks more difficult for everyone else as a result. Higher-ups don't notice because their workload got a little lighter, which is all that mattered. Filling the cracks with glue, here we go. The final worst reason for it is because they don't want any loopholes to be exploited, bad press, and HR appeasement, and to keep money from falling through the cracks, end quote. I'll compare it to hiring armed guards to stop gas station shoplifters. And I will. I'm doing that right now. It's far too much effort, money, and or a nuisance to everyone else compared to what little you save, which is less than 1% based on statistics. But I can't pull those up right now. We gotta keep going. It is also a lot more expensive as you're paying these people... Oh, wait, no. I already wrote that one down, or said that it went out. As mentioned earlier, lots of people might find that trade-off of creating these roles would be worth it. The it being the paragraph I almost repeated. It is also a lot more expensive as you're paying these people management and administrative salaries for interfering with productivity and development. So, yeah. No. If it's worth it, it's worth it. But don't. Just don't. Be better. Find better solutions to these problems, or just let them be. Let them be. As mentioned earlier, lots of people might find the trade-off of creating these roles worth it. What I was referring to was number 2, the reverse optimization approach. They can and often do serve roles that take loads off of their plate, which is understandable. Doing it for personal reasons is completely human. It's when they believe that these actually make everyone's lives and you need to keep creating more where we start finding the corporate brain rot. Number 7. Taking out loans and investing everything into high-risk projects that could bankrupt your company. Brought to you by a disgustingly unfathomable amount of banks, stockbrokers, and finance institutions. There are so many I couldn't bother naming one or all of them. This system is undeniably brain rot. It is bottom-feeding, greedy, parasitic behavior. and a perfect example of relying on everything else to keep you afloat. It manifests when a company is no longer satisfied with their earnings and their number has plateaued from going any higher. But the reason why they keep doing this is disappointing but well known. Government bailouts. When a company reaches a certain level of success, especially banks, the government becomes deeply invested in their success for the sake of, quote, the economy, end quote. It is to, quote, protect the economy, end quote, they say. It is to preserve jobs, they say. It doesn't matter what the intention is, if that is even the truth. The fact of the matter is that the more they bail these companies out, the more they encourage and enable this self-destructive behaviors. All on the expense of the economy and taxpayers. That money could have gone to doctors, schools, police. Hell, they could have gone to Raytheon, their favorite little company. But it doesn't. One example from the US, although don't misconstrue this as a strictly American issue, what happened in 2020. Oh, did I forget to name the company on this? Well, it doesn't matter. It is a medical company with a history of terrible patient care that settled a $41 million lawsuit for fraud and then received $45 million in bailouts just days after from the CARES Act. Number 8. Hiring hated public figures when your brand is when your brand is your public image. My bad there, sorry. Brought to you by Disney. Twice. That's right, they did it twice. Or at least they almost did. No pretenses on this one, we have a lot more to go through. This is going to be a very, very pointed example, but it is warranted by the sheer rot involved in even entertaining these kinds of decisions. Number 1, we know her, we love her, Rachel Zegler. I don't blame Disney for hiring her. There is no way they could have known what a problem she would be, at least from what I have seen. And she was a pretty up-and-coming actress who could sing like a robin. The perfect choice for Snow White, other than the fact that she's not white. The problem is that they kept her after she started bashing the original film in front of everybody and became a repeated problem child, on and off the set. Number 2, Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA. That's a lot of letters, and we're going to get into a lot more later. Andrew was reportedly headhunted to replace Bob Iger as CEO of Disney. He is a very profitable figure. There is no denying his results, as hateable as his means may be. Problem is Disney's entire brand is, again, its public image, and this man runs a company that has an entire Wikipedia page dedicated exclusively to documenting and explaining why people hate the company so much. He has been there for and behind nearly every single decision listed on it. Why would you think that he was the perfect person to fix your public image? Disney's biggest fault at this point in time is that its image is gone. Nobody loves Disney anymore outside of Disney adults who are another stain on their reputation and don't spend nearly as much money as anyone else to make up for it. There may be no recovering that Disney magic with most of the world, but that does not mean abandon all pretenses of caring. They're bankrupt in every way other than financial. Rather than entertaining the EA approach, universally hated but profitable, how about some damage control? Recreate the Kennedy assassination and get rid of Kathleen, then purge all traces of her within Lucasfilm. Followed by getting your talents in line. Hire some real creatives again. Fire the people in charge of your remakes and poach some people from DreamWorks if you insist on continuing with the remakes. They did very well with the How to Train Your Dragon movie, I've heard. I'm going to watch it soon. Oh, and repair the parks. It's not that hard. Do I need to pose as a seedy, talentless consulting firm? Will that finally make you listen to public sentiment and common sense? Or have you truly gotten too big to be saved, much like Babe from the American folklore of Paul Bunyan, who will consume everything until you're too big to sustain and inevitably must leave or die of starvation? Oh, and an update. They're imitating the Democratic Party. They've finally realized the value of young male viewers. Little late on that, but go ahead, I guess. Number 9, no criticism. We're going to get personal with this one. Brought to you by Microtel. Criticism and advice is essential to growth and positive change. If nobody criticizes you, you end up in an echo chamber. Can't find problems, make improvements, or stop the rot. This symptoms featured host might seem unusual, but the example comes directly from personal experience. Without getting into specifics that could get me sued, the Microtel system server is horrible. Beyond awful. An essential, commonly used feature is locked behind 9 clicks. All of that on slow Wi-Fi and a clunky page format, rather than being an option on the home page, which it should be. How you use this feature is brilliantly unintuitive as well. Then there's collecting and cataloging payment. I know for a fact that there are better ways to do it, from first-hand account from a coworker who had a much better system at his old job, and my own from handling money from other jobs and the servers from working in IT. No criticism was allowed, at least from the head manager. My direct manager was much more receptive, but still wouldn't admit that it was a problem, and couldn't explain my biggest issue with it in a way that really made sense. All due respect to her, but it sounds a lot like the badgering. A lot like the badgering? What the hell did I mean by that? And talking in circles. Oh, like the badgering and talking in circles I do when I'm in a corner. Okay, yeah, no, that's what I meant. When talking to the head manager, they would tell me to shut up and say that nobody else has these problems, so clearly it isn't that hard. It isn't hard. It's overcomplicated, inefficient, and had several errors, most of which I got blamed for. I wasn't expecting them to fix the problem. They couldn't. I expected them to accurately defer the blame upwards, entertain the idea that maybe it could be better. But all suggestions, criticism, ideas, and even its actual routine glitches and errors were all waved away, and I was made into the problem, without even showing me how to correct some of the errors either, for which I was frequently alone on the overnight shift when they happened. Microtel is a good organization. Do not harass them. Microtel managers, if you see this, yes, I'm still mad at you, but I would happily provide extensive suggestions for improvement to deliver to the server development team, for a small fee of all the deposits you encouraged me to make for a vacation I was planning months in advance. With an insurance, I would still have a job then fired me 3 days later without just cause. My reasoning for cataloging this as a weak symptom of corporate brain rot is that there are, unfortunately, individual bad actors when it comes to providing and receiving criticism. And even more unfortunately, at a certain size, it becomes impossible for an organization to address every complaint. Not taking criticism isn't a strong indicator of corporate brain rot. Sometimes it can just be a logistical problem accompanied by a singular jerk. Number 10. Catering to the 1%. Catering to the 1% in this definition does not mean the people who hold all the money. That's a good demographic to go for. They're one of the few people with money left to spare. It means the small amount of people who don't consume your product and have no interest in it when you're a multi-billion-dollar industry. As a whole, wanting to expand your customer base isn't a bad idea. Pissing off the world to get a tiny amount of people who want nothing to do with your brand is a ridiculously horrible idea. Something straight out of a comedy TV show. Who could be so stupid? You probably think I'm going to say Marvel, don't you? Well, you'd be wrong. We're talking about Applebee's. There were a lot of options for this. Visa, MasterCard, Marvel, Disney, and so on. But those aren't as interesting as the story behind Applebee's pursuit of their 1%. Applebee's had a lot of problems to it, from food that looked and tasted like it was reheated in a broken microwave, to not just airport pricing, but concert and convention food prices, and joined the Value Member Award over half a year too late, where it wasn't a deal anymore. It was expected of every brand by that point. Without any actual compelling deals on the menu either. But their biggest downfall was upsetting their regulars to reach the millennial audience. Applebee's invested heavily in rebranding to attract younger diners, including upscale menu items and a perceived foodie vibe. I repeat what their actual food was reminiscent of, which is looked and tasted like it was reheated in a broken microwave. Naturally, nobody bought into this. The quinoa bowls, cocktails, pop culture references, and digital menus didn't attract younger audience. Instead, it pushed away their older regulars and family. Instead, it pushed away their older regulars and families, which was a majority of their customer base. Then they implemented B's Late Night and Club B's, wherein they let individual locations approach an after-hours audience with the former and full-blown nightclub crowds with the latter. Nobody wanted to party at Applebee's. And the older folks and families didn't appreciate that the restaurant became a nightclub after closing. Now nobody likes Applebee's. Number 11, attaching your brand's identity to causes you don't actually support. Brought to you by Novartis. Actually, this hypocrisy is incredibly common. I literally cannot name a single example of where a company made solid efforts towards these causes. Donations do not count, they are write-offs. Novartis is an example of a company that promotes one thing but does another. Wait, hold on a minute. I'm going to change today's sponsor, but before I do, Novartis publicly stated support for diversity and inclusion for women while facing lawsuits alleging discrimination against women. They are a Swiss pharmaceutical company. Here we go. McDonald's. McDonald's flipped their logos upside down for International Women's Day with, quote, no intention of making any monetary donation at this time, end quote. That might be a record for most expensive and meaningless virtue signal in history. I don't have any numbers on that, unfortunately. This is labeled in the weak category as it does not actually harm the public or company in any meaningful ways. That, alongside how common it is, does not classify as anything more substantial. It does classify as corporate brainrot since it does have the opportunity to manifest into the title, where companies become so focused on pretending they care, they start to disrupt the brand, do more harm than good, and do extremely expensive virtue signaling that make themselves into an everlasting meme. Yeah, this is what McDonald's did. I'm not joking. The WickDonald's is real, guys. Number 12. Business viability relies on forcing customers to keep paying subscriptions. Brought to you by every gym chain ever. And Tinder. A business is not a government. Subscriptions are not taxes. No matter how much they try to be, they should not be allowed to and are not the government. They do not get to force you to stay paying them. A gym membership is not taxes. Your cable bill is not taxes. Streaming services are not taxes. Tinder is definitely not taxes. They systematically make it as difficult as possible to unsubscribe from them, and they try to charge you without your knowledge. Some have even gone as far as threatening to sue their users for not paying annual subscriptions on a service they haven't used in half a year after their card declined. Quick shout out to Vegas Pro. If you subscribe to Tinder on your iPhone, then switch to an Android. Yes, this is based off of a real life example, mine. It is nigh impossible to cancel that subscription without contacting your bank or credit card company. Fun fact, it is not as easy as just getting a hold of them. This was to be called... Oh wait, my bad. There was proposed regulation by the FTC that was supposed to outlaw these kinds of behaviors. That would make it necessary to allow unsubscribing to be as easy as subscribing was. This was to be called the click-to-cancel rule. Naturally, this somehow became a very controversial rule. It made its way to the U.S. Appeals Court, whereas of a few weeks ago, at the time of writing this, was shut down. I'd love to call out the bastards who vetoed it right here, but the judges are seemingly kept anonymous, admittedly for good reason. We wouldn't want another Luigi Mangione situation, would we? Number 13, hiring multi-million-dollar HR teams to understand your customers instead of doing a 5-minute Google search. Brought to you by the Democratic Party. Oh, wait, wrong way. Oh, no, I was right. If you are spending millions of dollars to figure out what the consumer wants, then you're lighting money on fire because a small team on the internet will find the answers for you within a day. It is so easy that only one person needs to do a weekend to sift through the relevant and irrelevant information. The only people advocating for hiring the overpriced firms are incredibly outdated, receiving bribes of some kind, finding any excuse to spend money for whatever reason, possibly money laundering, but I can't say anything for sure, or are exceedingly lazy. Nobody needs $20 million to figure out what your customer wants. Millions of them will explain what the problem is online for free, and they do. You don't even need to read all their complaints. Go find a big political or commentary streamer and listen to them. They're big because people agree with what they say. Whether they have the right information or not, people listen to them because they agree with what they have to say. This goes out to today's sponsor, the Democratic Party. But the most fascinating and hilarious part of this is that even with $20 million at their disposal, they still failed massively, horrifically, one might say. Yeah, I couldn't find a relevant image of the failure. I couldn't find an image of the representative. Enjoy a cute dog. Number 14. Murder is fine as long as we can't be sued for it. Brought to you by Bayer Pharmaceutical. I sincerely hope I don't have to justify or explain any of this to you, so instead we shall be doing a history lesson on the creators of aspirin. About that time, Bayer intentionally gave that word HIV. I know, it wasn't through the fun way. Apparently, last year they also gave out a product that gave people cancer. So that's going to be fun. Now to clarify, they did get sued. Out the ass for it actually, but the fines and lawsuits at the time didn't even come close to the amount of money they made. By instead of dumping the HIV-infected protein, they recalled it from America and Germany, their home country, and resold it in Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Argentina, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Taiwan. Plus other locations from my understanding, although I couldn't find a list of all the names. At least 8,000 confirmed infections occurred, and over 4,500 deaths directly attributed to the tainted Factor VIII by the early 2000s, with the actual numbers probably being much higher, around 7,000 or more, based on my recollection. As many as of the Asian and South American countries, especially in the underdeveloped regions, are incomplete or wholly absent from the record. The real death toll could easily exceed 7,000, with thousands of more lives ruined. I'd also like to specify that this protein, the HIV protein, was supposed to be for hemophiliacs, people who suffered blood disorders. And HIV targets and destroys blood, from my understanding. So they sold poison to people already dying of poison. It would be easy to attribute this mindset to raw greed instead of corporate brain rot. While that would be a fair assessment, I find it lacking. There is lots of rot to be found here. The fact that this company wasn't scrubbed off the face of the earth by the collective nations is the rot. They felt entirely comfortable stating to the press that they did it because they knew there would be no consequences for them, and there wasn't. They were right. After all the fines and lawsuits were closed, they paid out $660 million. And if I'm correct, they made $1.5 billion or more. They intentionally sold poison to half the globe, and the reason why they weren't shut down and arrested, according to them, and the damage to trade relations it might caused. Weren't shut down and arrested, according to them. Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Anyways, there was no rule against it, in short. That's why they weren't arrested, and that it might cause trade relations, and there was no criminal intent to harm beyond reasonable doubt. Yeah, because going on press tours to say you'd rather sell poison to hemophiliacs at a massive markup instead of dumping $20,000 of bad product wasn't enough evidence to prove intent, along with numerous internal memos with executives saying they were aware that the batch was poison, that they had safer alternatives, and were being ordered to take it out of America because it was dangerous. The FDA was fully aware of Bayer's actions when they were redistributing it to other countries and, quote, advised against it, end quote, instead of prohibiting them. Japan's officials colluded with importers to delay switching to safer products. Multiple countries stated that they did not sue Bayer because they were scared of losing U.S. medical imports in retaliation. And then there were these memo excerpts. One reason was that the company had several fixed-price contracts and believed that the old product would be cheaper to produce. Use up stocks of the old medicine before switching to its safer, better product. There is excess non-heated inventory. Review international markets again to determine if more of this product can be sold. Harry Meyer charged the companies that it was unacceptable for them to ship that material overseas, but asked that the matter be quietly solved without alerting Congress, the medical community, and the public. The corporate brainrot wasn't just with Bayer Pharmaceutical, but every nation that enabled and assisted them in doing this. America, for asking them to pull the product from the nation, knew they had every intention of selling it elsewhere and did nothing. Japan was helping them slow the process of replacing the bad product so they can sell more of it there. The World Health Organization, who would set guidelines on the safety of products like these but had no enforcement power. GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, had no stipulations on what could and couldn't be done with medical products, which was probably with good intention. You don't want to hold up people receiving medicine, but they should have known better that people would abuse that, because that meant that they could be sold entirely unregulated without consequence if they were faulty or dangerous, an oversight that was obviously exploited. It could be argued, and probably is, that the FDA had little to no impact on the situation. That is the farthest from true. Their refusal to step in and forbid Bayer Pharmaceutical from selling this was the linchpin of the incident. Although they did urge them not to, the FDA had the authority to order them to recall all of their faulty products. Dr. Harry Meyer of the FDA could have invoked Section 801 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to ban the export of these products entirely instead of letting them be sold overseas. On top of referring the case to the Department of Justice for criminal negligence, which, while it did not have as much power and oversight as it does now, would still have been a big agent in preventing the outcome. Back then, the FDA's decisions also had massive weight globally. If they had sanctioned Bayer Pharmaceutical, Japan, Latin America, and many European countries, like West Germany's BGA, would have felt immense pressure to join them. The BGA is notable because Germany is Bayer's home nation. If the BGA had stepped in, they would not have been able to sell or export their product anywhere outside of the country, and any importing nations would likely have pulled the product in response after the restrictions and condemnation. There was a video I had watched in the past that expertly summarized this situation, but the creator unfortunately took it down. So this took me an extra 2 weeks to do. I hope my clunky analysis and discussion was satisfactory for you. I do recommend looking into it on your own time. It's a very interesting situation. And make sure that you're not, and look into the cancer situation too. Make sure you're not taking anything that will give you, cancer. Out of everything on this list, this is probably in the top 5 most disturbing. Corporate brainrot here laid in everyone who let this happen. The countries that let themselves be dissuaded with technicalities and arguments of arbitration such as, you had no rule against it, so what did I do wrong? Common sense lost out to arbitration. Thousands of vulnerable lives were lost to greed and inaction. The company is bigger and stronger than ever because of it. And the best part is how easy it is to imagine this happening again today. Number 15, relying on corporate or HR speak to talk to employees and the public. Brought to you by Microsoft. This is going to be fun. If you cannot communicate with your employees or audience like human beings, then what else can I say about the situation? It is entirely possible that the individual in question could be socially awkward, but it doesn't excuse every situation. For instance, you're not ready for this. Hello there. Microsoft's strategy is focused on productivity and our desire to help people do more. As the Microsoft Devices Group, our role is to light up this strategy. Light up? Seriously, dude? For people. We are the team creating the hardware that showcases the finest of Microsoft's digital work and digital life experiences. And we will be the confluence of the best of Microsoft's applications, operating systems, and cloud services. To align with Microsoft's strategy, we plan to focus our efforts, like you weren't already. Given the wide range of device experiences, we must concentrate on the areas where we can add the most value. The roots of this company and our future are in productivity and helping people get things done. Good for you, dude. Our fundamental focus for phones, Surface, for meetings with devices like PPI, Xbox hardware, and new areas of innovation is to build on that strength. While our direction in the majority of our teams is largely unchanging, we have had an opportunity to plan carefully about the alignment of phones within Microsoft as the transferring Nokia team continues with its integration progress. What the fuck did I just read? It is particularly important to recognize that the role of phones within Microsoft is different than it was within Nokia. Whereas the hardware business of phones within Nokia was an end unto itself, you tried to get real fancy with that, didn't you? Within Microsoft, all of our devices are intended to embody the finest of Microsoft's digital work and digital life experiences, while accruing value to Microsoft's overall strategy. Our device strategy must reflect... Can you stop saying strategy? Microsoft's strategy, what did I just say, dude? And must be accomplished within an appropriate financial envelope. Therefore, we plan to make some changes. We will be particularly focused on making the market for Windows Phone. In the near term, we plan to drive Windows Phone volume. You do understand why that's confusing, right? Like, I know what volume you mean, but that was probably confusing to a few people. By targeting the more affordable smartphone segments, which are the fastest growing segments of the market. Good for you! With Lumia. I have no idea who that is. In addition to the portfolio already planned, we plan to deliver additional lower cost Lumia devices by shifting select future Nokia X designs and products to Windows Phone devices. We expect to make this shift immediately while continuing to sell and support existing Nokia X products. Well, that is a very lengthy message right there. And wow, you went all in on that, didn't you? Like, that is so much worse saying out loud than it was in my head. Good thing we're not done. To win in the higher price segments, we will focus on delivering great breakthrough products in alignment with major milestones ahead from both the Windows team and the Applications and Services group. We will ensure that the very best experiences and scenarios from across the company will be showcased on our products. We plan to take advantage of innovation from the Windows team, like universal Windows apps, to continue to enrich the Windows application ecosystem. And in the very lowest price ranges, we plan to run our first phones business for maximum efficiency with a smaller team. What? We expect these changes to have an impact to our team structure. With our focus, we plan to consolidate the former smart devices and mobile phones business units into one phone business unit that is responsible for all of our phone efforts. Jesus Christ, dude, get to the point. Under the plan, the phone business unit will be led by Joe Harlow with key members from both the smart devices and mobile phones teams in the management team. What? This team, can you stop saying team for the love of God, will be responsible for the success of our Lumia products, the transition of selected future Nokia products to Lumia, and for the ongoing operation of the first phone business. What the fuck does that mean? As part of the effort, we plan to select appropriate business model approach for our sales markets while continuing to offer our products in all markets with a strong focus on maintaining the business continuity. We will determine, Jesus Christ, will you stop? Each market approach based on local market dynamics, our ability to profitably deliver local variants, current Lumia momentum, and the strategic importance of the market to Microsoft. This will all be balanced with overall capability to invest. Our phone engineering efforts are expected to be concentrated in Salo, Finland for future high-end Lumia products, and Tampere, Finland for more affordable devices. Congratulations, you love Finland. We plan to develop the supporting technologies in both locations. We plan to ramp down our engineering work in Oulu. Yeah, fun. And while we plan to reduce the engineering in Beijing and San Diego, both sites will continue to have supporting roles, including affordable devices in Beijing and supporting specific U.S. requirements to San Diego. Yeah, by the way, this is a letter people received telling them they're being laid off. That's what this entire thing has been about so far. We're laying you off. SBU and Lund are planned to continue to be focused on application software development. We plan to right-size our manufacturing operations, you mean fire us, to align to the new strategy and take advantage of integration opportunities. We expect to focus phone production mainly in Hanoi, with some production to continue in Beijing and Dongguan. We plan to shift other Microsoft manufacturing operation and repair operations to Jesus fucking Christ, Manaus and Reynosa respectively, and start a phased exit from Comoran, Hungary. They mean more layoffs. I genuinely forgot that there was a third page to this. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm going to get a glass of water after we're done this. In short, we will focus on driving Lumia volume in the areas where we are already successful today in order to make the market for Windows Phone. Huh? With more speed, we will build on our success in the affordable smartphone space with new products offering more differentiation. We will focus on acquiring new customers in the markets where Microsoft's services and products are most concentrated, and we'll continue building momentum around applications. Good for you. We plan that this would result in an estimated reduction of 12,500 factory direct and professional employees over the next year. Congratulations! You read, we're not even done, but you're reading 3 whole pages of text, of corporate Brainrot text to tell you that over 10,000 people are losing their jobs. Does this make you feel better? It makes me feel better, truly. I mean, I am relieved that I had to read all this to find out I was being fired. These decisions are difficult for the team, and we plan to support departing team members with severance benefits. Yeah, try laying off 12,500 people without giving any of them severance. That would be a class action lawyer's wet dream. More broadly, across the devices team, we will continue our efforts to bring iconic tablets. I can't even name a single one of your tablets, but okay. to market in a ways that complement our OEM partners. What the fuck is that? Power the next generation of meetings and collaboration devices and thoughtfully expand Windows with new interaction models. With a set of changes already implemented earlier this year in these teams, this means there will be limited change for the Surface, Xbox hardware, PPI meetings, or next generation teams. Will you stop? We recognize that these planned changes are broad, have mercy, please, and have very difficult implications for many of our team members. You mean firing 12,500 people and are trying to claim that you're giving them their rightful severance is a good thing. Good for you. Fuck you. We will work to provide as much clarity and information as possible. There's more? We're gonna get more. Well, the people being laid off, are going to get more than all of this. Today and over the coming weeks, leaders across the organization will hold town halls, host information sharing sessions, you mean talking to each other, and provide more details on the intranet. How did I not notice before intranet? There's a typo in this, and it's a big one. Hey, did we pay our intranet bill this month? No? Okay. Well, nobody's ever heard of that anyway, so probably for the best. The team transferring from Nokia and the teams have been part of Microsoft have each experienced a number of remarkable changes these last few years. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be the biggest one for them. We operate in a competitive industry that moves rapidly, and change is necessary. As difficult as some of our changes are today, this direction deliberately aligns our work with the cross-company efforts that Satya has described in his recent emails. Collectively, the clarity, focus, and alignments across the company and opportunity to deliver the results of that work into the hands of the people will allow us to increase our success in the future. Well, good for you. Regards, Steven. Steven? Fuck you for making me read all that. Fuck you, dude. 1 second, I'm gonna plug in my charger. Okay. 16. Incapable of admitting to wrongdoings and mistakes. Brought to you by an undisclosed company because I used to work for them. This symptom stems from a fear of lawsuits. I know this firsthand from when I took management training at undisclosed company. The training materials taught me a lot about the company's mindset, and I assure you it is not exclusive to them. The reasoning for this symptom being classified as weak is that there is a legal basis to this, however immature or flimsy that it is. To draw straight from the material I was trained on, companies will refuse to give employees an explanation or grounds for their firing because it could be used against them in a wrongful termination lawsuit, even if they had rightful cause to fire them. In this specific example, I would rate it as high. The sheer stupidity and pettiness on this is astounding. By the way, I guess they didn't know this. The training materials I read looked like they cost $50 in a weekend to develop. I could have made a better portfolio than that, but whatever. If you refuse to give people cause for firing, they can sue you for wrongful firing. I know, genius, I know. This also extends to non-legal situations as well. Like when a bank overcharges you or a company and you call them about it to fix the problem. They will refuse to even entertain the notion that it is an error. Outright tell you that it's your fault and hang up on you. I know from experience. Then you get a call 4 to 6 hours later. Guess why? Number 17, the death of the you need to spend money to make money philosophy. Brought to you by Sears. This is going to be a long one. Buckle in. The phrase you have to spend money to make money is a long-standing idiom with its roots dating back forever. While it's difficult to pinpoint an exact origin, the sentiment behind it is ancient. This is probably the most important idiom in capitalist history, but now this practice is treated like some carnal sin, Never spend any money that doesn't 100% optimize bringing money in. Making money is great, and you shouldn't excessively waste money, but the refusal to spend money from multi-billion-dollar corporations around the world has led to global-wide recessions, particularly in the West and China. We, as industries, need to be more comfortable parting with money that comes in. The problem with that is that most successful institutions today are involved in the stock market. If the problem with this is unclear, we don't have time to explain why stock involvement prevents companies from loosening their purse strings. Ask your dad. To put my feelings on it simply, good idea, terrible practice, I hate it. This is a medium-tier corporate brainrot because it is not self-destructive or approaching it. It is just disruptive to the world around it. It can also lead to stagnation and mold from within, as what happened to Sears. Sears was nearly a household name in terms of success. Everybody, at least in the West, knew about it. Founded in 1982 and by the 20th century became the largest retailer in the U.S. In 2005, they had a merger that put Eddie Lambert in charge. Oh, Eddie. Instead of investing in company growth or sustainability, he funneled it all into stock buybacks and even withheld funding from many essential departments and stores to fund it, leaving them fighting for whatever was left over. This gross mismanagement led to a multitude of issues within the company, from numerous understaffed departments to silos and dysfunction. The stores went unmaintained, nothing was invested into e-commerce or improvements in the operations, the development and growth stunted as the foundation fell apart. Naturally, this drove their customers away and profitability plummeted. Who could have guessed that not paying to upkeep the stores would have been a bad idea? To make up the losses, Eddie started selling their strongest assets, including Craftsman, at a massive discount. They filed for $11.8 billion of bankruptcy in 2018. There are many other things that accelerated this and actions Eddie Lambert did to profit from the destruction of the company, but that's unrelated to the core topic. Number 18, responsibility as a reward. While a nightmarishly dystopian philosophy, this just narrowly avoids the terminal category. The reason for this is because it's done in an effort to save money. It isn't necessarily self-destructive yet. It is just immoral and abusive. A good explanation of the harm this can do to your own work environment can be found in this post here. I don't know why the guy's name is censored. I think he deserves the credit, all the credit in the world. All we have is just a little blurry face. Being good at your job often attracts more work. It's called performance punishment, and it is a dangerous game for leaders. Overworking your high performers to avoid growing your underperformers is a fast track to disaster. It breeds resentment. Good people will leave, and poor performers will not learn. Be very careful of the behaviors and standards we reward. This is very real. According to a 23 pay scale report, only 39% of employees who were promoted received a salary raise alongside their promotion. They will reward efficient workers with more scrutiny and a bigger workload. I know this from my work at undisclosed company. They give their best workers the worst shifts, and will refuse to give them a part-time schedule or the hours they ask for or need to live their lives. Also, all completely bullshit. But to focus on this for a moment, there is even more evidence to support it. A survey by Office Team in Canada found that 47% of HR managers said promotions without a raise are common, with 14% calling it very common and 33% saying somewhat common. If any of you are arguing that these payless promotions are an investment in your future, I have a pike to pick with you. Meet me out back. Now, I can't find any companies doing this by name. I will say that I worked for a company, the undisclosed one, where the manager was still making less than the national average, and I had received an offer not too long ago where I would make more money than her as a baseline salary just going door to door and talking to people compared to somebody who was, managing a restaurant so profitable. The owner was taking year-long vacations with his family, or not year-long, repeated intercontinental vacations with his family over a month each. Do we have any questions from symptoms 1 through 18? Please ask them now. I will grab some quick water. That Microsoft memo really burned my throat. I will answer them when I get back. Let's see here. Okay, it doesn't seem like we have any more questions. Let's move on. Convenience is a better truth than reality. Brought to you by, we'll get to them. There is no room for a narrative that isn't in support of the bottom line. Anything not in support of this selfless, altruistic goal of making an endless amount of money that is so vast could only exist for the purpose of breaking rights cannot afford to exist. But oftentimes the reality of any given situation isn't in line with this. So what is the solution to this big problem, this epidemic across capitalists worldwide? You need to write your own. A famous and one of the few publicly recorded cases of media manipulation on such a scale was News of the World, a British tabloid that existed from 1843 to 2011. It was shut down after a scandal broke of their reporters using phone hacking and bribing government officials to obtain their stories. They also paid insiders for damaging stories targeting politicians and rivals. These actions served as direct influence over media, effectively shaping the narratives to whatever they wanted them to be. Numerous convictions were brought down, and a notable example being their editor, Andy Coulson. Unfortunately, that is the most relevant conviction I can source. But if I go into scandals and allegations that startlingly did not break the law, I have many more choices to pick from. Let's go through a few. Alp Services is next. A Swiss intelligence firm hired by the UAE allegedly orchestrated a smear campaign against Hazim Nada's company Lord Energy, falsely linking it to terrorism networks. I don't know how this wasn't against the law, but the campaign used fake exposés and paid journalists to shape media narratives, causing business ruin. Alp Services is still open today, not Lord Energy. Poor guys. Facebook. Leaked emails revealed Facebook paid PR firm Burson Marsteller to anonymously pitch misleading stories about Google to major outlets, framing Google's social circle feature as a privacy crisis. I'm not sure why they needed to make something up. I went through my privacy things the other day, and Google had turned on my microphone in the background 3 times over the course of a week. Our phones are quite literally listening to us. Hi Google, fuck you. This campaign backfired when media researcher Christopher Soghoian. Yeah, that sounds right. That's one of the few times I was ever tripped up by a name. No legal action followed. Why not? Meta, also Facebook. Reporters alleged Meta hired consulting firm Targeted Victory to plant op-eds, letters, and local press pieces portraying TikTok as harmful to children and society. It is, though. It is harmful to children and society. There was a guy who sprayed bug killer on a bunch of fruits in a grocery store as a part of a TikTok trend. The campaigns were disguised as grassroots citizen originated. Again, while the media manipulation, it was unfortunately not a legal violation, just an ethical one. Bell Pottinger. Although not criminally prosecuted, Bell Pottinger was expelled by the UK's PR body for orchestrating a campaign in South Africa that inflamed racial tensions through fake Twitter accounts and planted narratives blaming white monopoly capital to benefit clients linked to President Zuma's inner circle. Edelman. Edelman reportedly ran ghostwriting and astroturfing campaigns for Microsoft during the antitrust litigation. And Walmart, including grassroots-style blogs, editorializing in favor of clients while disguising corporate sponsorship. No criminal courts were involved with this as well. While I am normally a large advocate of the belief that if somebody wasn't convicted, then they are innocent, this does not apply to these situations. Many of them never made it to court or were punished in ways other than prison or foreclosure. Companies like Google, Facebook, Meta, Microsoft, and Walmart have long records of violating not just their customers' rights and insulting their intelligence, but also breaking the law. The only reason they are still open today is they receive bailouts and benefits from the governments and don't receive the appropriate punishments necessary to bring them down due to the 8th Amendment. Unfortunately, this problem is not changing for a long time. Scalable punishments is at least another decade off, and media manipulation being properly outlawed and enforced is probably even farther off, only because it's harder to prosecute. I do have one more very strong example of this, which I'll be going into more detail further on in Symptom 41. Oh, right. I genuinely cannot remember what the prompt for this was. And I am and was too tired to figure out what it was or come up with a new one. This is Future Me's problem, and I am Future Me. If he can't cut it, I can't. Then I'm surely you're smart enough to know what it means. Opinions are not allowed to exist. Number 21. Enough is never enough. Brought to you by Warren Buffett. Never relinquishing power or stepping down from positions of authority. Constantly chasing and making more money than you would ever need to spend. The whole point of capitalism and making money is to eventually get enough and retire. But the people doing that anymore are those who are too old and broken to work, who have to pray that they eventually die before their measly savings run out, or prominent figures that are forced out of their positions either through scandals or being pushed out by other members of the company, party, and organization. By the way, do we have anybody who disagrees on the whole point of capitalism thing being enough to retire? Anybody disagree on that? No? Okay. This creates a problem where the next generations are unable to move up any ladders. Their only hope of success lie in fields that haven't already cemented an old guard or have revolving door process, kind of like porn, such as streaming, content creation, or acting, and porn. I mean, there's no old guard in porn. I don't think anybody disagrees with that one, huh? This isn't indicative of a healthy economy. When positions are hoarded, there is nothing left for anyone else. A perfect example of this is Warren Buffett, a 94-year-old man with allegedly $140 billion to his name. He has been head of Berkshire Hathaway for over 50 years now, and honestly, I respect that. That's a cool guy. I mean, that kind of company loyalty is rare nowadays. I wonder if it has anything to do with his massive salary. I have no problem with him as a person. It is pretty clear that he enjoys what he does, and that is not an uncommon situation, but that doesn't dissolve the problem that far too many people are doing it. The system was designed for change, competition, or for generations to step down and let the younger generations take over from there. But they aren't. Western governments are filled to the brim with elderly people that are, and excuse my rudeness, but extremely outdated, corrupt, and or too estranged from the reality of the world to know what is actually going on. A vast majority of them could retire very comfortably by now, but either greed or fear of relinquishing control, likely spawned from prejudice and echo chambers, keep them from doing so. Well, that got a little bit doomorous. Shall we... Let's have a picture of a cat to help cheer the mood. Wait. That's not right. Hold on. Please hold on for a minute. We seem to be having some technical difficulties. That one doesn't even look right at all. I think something is wrong with your sword. Never mind, forget I said anything. Who are you? Oh, that's not bad. Okay, this needs to stop. No, 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 no furries! No, no, no. Wait. Close enough. Let's continue. I fucking hate the internet. Okay, let's compromise. Let's start over. Well, that got a bit doomorous. Have pictures of cute kittens to help cheer the mood. Maybe there's a reason why they don't trust us. So, yeah, we're just gonna rest here for a minute. Just calm down, unwind, then we'll continue. Brainwashing employees, number 22. Or at least trying to. Brought to you by Walmart. The Statute of International Criminal Court, ICC, which was adopted in July 1998 and entered into force in 2002, also includes physical and psychological torture in the definition of war crimes and crimes against humanity, over which it has jurisdiction, end quote. Pulled from the Guide to Humanitarian Law, Article 3, Torture, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment. War crimes also include outrages upon personal dignity and humiliating and degrading treatment which are not considered as torture, pulled from the same source. Am I accusing Walmart of being war criminals? No, as much as I would like to, and funny in thought as it would be, I am not and could not. I just felt like that would be a good opening. Oh yeah, back when I was considering streaming this on Kick, I had to omit this because Kick has no freedom of speech laws anymore. And all laws are on Kick apply to Wales, England, so I had to remove that. In short, I made a list tiering everything, and from a bunch of major companies, and Walmart actually beat out Amazon in terms of human rights violations and attempted brainwashing of their employees in a lighter sense. Obviously not going to the same level as the CIA or terrorist organizations do. But yeah, no, so I had to cut this out because I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to do this. I was going to censor everything. I opted against censorship just to make things simpler. I'll go back there again for the next stream. Number 23, outwardly lying to investors. Brought to you by Sony. Release the Epstein files. Release the JFK files, but nobody's asking the really important question. Release the real Concord budget sheet. We all know you're lying about how much you actually spent making that game. Number 24, pretending to care is more important than caring. Brought to you by Twitter. Twitter users. Unfortunately, companies don't care about you. I know, I'm sorry to be the one to break it to you. This is probably worse than finding out Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny aren't real. This is regrettably our reality. Your banker doesn't care about you, your insurance agent doesn't care about you, your favorite streamer probably doesn't care about you, maybe your doctor. Your doctor might. For a lot of institutions, the act of caring is more profitable than actually doing so. To care would be making actual effort to change things. Changes that more often than not involve money. But signaling that you care, now that's cheap. A free tweet here, some cheap printed signs there, doing an interview where you promise changes so far into the future that you can only hope nobody will remember it. As our featured guest suggests, we are, as a society, are not too different. People, especially Twitter users, will post about a problem but rarely can't even be bothered to read into it, which is fine. We are all busy, stressed, drained from our miserable lives. That is why many of us have and rely on our favorite streamers and content creators to do the research for us. Unfortunately, very few of them have the actual truth in mind. Sometimes they can get something wrong, but the fact is that they have biases of their own, plus a financial incentive to tell you whatever you want to hear. But to get back to Twitter people, they will go in droves to harass people, companies, and anyone that they disagree with. But the fact is that they don't care, at least on what matters. Sometimes the only thing that is real about them is their hatred, not what they actually want. All they feel is hate. So they'll push for a movement or a conversation, but as soon as they get what they want, they'll lose their interest in you, your company, and whatever you are fighting about. And then there's the old adage about the Nazis. Give an inch and they will take a mile. If you give in even a little bit, then they'll come at you harder next time demanding more. It will never be enough for them.
It's bullshit. It's the kill you love, not me.
I feel like that sums it up pretty well. The pecking order of responsibility. Change is never an option. So, we're going to go through a list of the pecking order of what companies will do when they get in trouble. A. If it can't be solved by ignoring it, try gaslighting. B. If it can't be solved with gaslighting, try manipulation with financial, emotional, etc. C. If it can't be solved with manipulation, try empty platitudes. D. If none of the above work, try a cheap one-time bribe. E. If cheap bribe doesn't work, try a tiny sum of money. F. If a small sum of money doesn't work, cycle through A and C again. Cycle A through C again. If F doesn't work, try threats, if applicable. H. If G isn't available, try a little bit more money. I. If H doesn't work, try bribery, if applicable. J. If bribery is not an option, try more money. K. If more money doesn't work, go to court. L. If court starts going wrong or is more expensive than the problem, proceed to A. Do nothing and wait for a court order, or M. Write bribery to an individual to turn the tide in your favor. N. If it cannot be solved with money, find a scapegoat. O. Conclusion. If it can't be solved with money, it isn't worth solving at all. Subscribe or follow if you want A through Z. Sorry about that. Criminal activity is okay and encouraged if deemed profitable. Brought to you by Insys Therapeutics. Lots of major companies skirt the law today. It is just a fact of our modern life and economic culture. However, while some companies bend the rules or outright break them to get ahead, there are several that push their employees and partners to break the law with or for them. Such behaviors are depicted in the movie Pain Hustlers, a movie based on the actions of pharmaceutical companies such as Insys Therapeutics. If you want a more in-depth perspective of that kind of corporate environment, I would strongly suggest checking it out. It's a very good movie. Whew! But to summarize, the movie portrays Chris Evans as a young hotshot at a struggling pharmaceutical company. He recruits a single mother without a science degree by lying about her credentials to his boss and introduces her to the world of drug sales. He pushes her to find a client using any method she can on her own, which teaches her that conventional approaches don't work. Then, once she lands a doctor's attention, he tells her that the only way to close a deal is with bribes. While lots of details of that story were likely dramatized or falsified, the underlying message and depiction of do whatever it takes to get ahead culture remains accurate. Believe me, I skipped a lot of them. The only detail that is missing from it is how fast the company will drop and disavow you as soon as you get caught, but happily keeping all the assets and clients you brought in by breaking the law. Number 27, workers' rights do not exist. Brought to you by Amazon. You know them, you love them, you probably use them. It's Amazon. A few of you have probably heard of the example I'll be mentioning, but for those of you who haven't, Amazon has been routinely abusing their employees for as long as its inception. It is so well renowned that Jeff Bezos has been parodied in multiple forms of media. For example, the episode My Big Flat Earth Wedding from Inside Job on Netflix, which I can't find clips of and could not be bothered to go any farther than a quick Google search. We're barely halfway through this presentation. I do recommend checking it out though. When a company abuses workers and their rights, it goes beyond an act of disrespect and crosses straight into dehumanizing them. Personally, I would never abuse an animal, but the fact is that they frequently are, and that isn't changing anytime soon. Not considering someone as a human being is a bad thing to do. Whether we like it or not, bad people are humans too, and humans have the capacity to do awful things. If they didn't, a lot of this list would not exist. But a lot of the employees that get abused haven't even done anything wrong. They're doing what they can for their company in exchange for money, which they need to survive. Their lives are in the hands of these companies in multiple ways. The company would not exist without someone filling these roles and working hard. Abusing and dehumanizing an employee is a bad thing to do. I don't know what else I need to say. If you disagree, I'm not changing your mind. Also, it opens you up to a lot of fines and lawsuits, although the lawsuits probably won't amount to anything and the fines will be trivial. But it's still a concern. Number 28. If they can't be bought, they must be killed. Brought to you by Boeing. Who's surprised by that one? Nobody. You probably think that this one belongs in very high or terminal because this is murder, but it's a result of exacerbated greed. There isn't any inhumane malice or self-destructive actions behind it. It is a calculated decision. There was a problem and they could not solve it with money, so they try to remove it. Murder is a bad thing to do, but it didn't come from naivete. It would be naive if the decision was to automatically kill them in a sloppy manner without trying any alternatives. But in this specific scenario, we're talking about resorting to it after exhausting other alternatives. Killing as a last resort instead of giving up, accepting it, and adapting to the issue. Thus, it is high. Much like not me, but I don't know, maybe some of you are. Just like the directors who ordered the crew to steal parts by kicking them into place while we're with all the coke rattling around in their brains. Oh yeah, that was a good joke. I like that joke. Number 29. Company rules are unchangeable, more immutable than the Ten Commandments. Brought to you by PayPal. An unwillingness to change rules spells the end of most organizations, even nations. Even the most fair of rules need exceptions. If every law and rule was followed to the letter, the world would be harsh and deeply unreasonable. That's the whole premise of many dystopian stories. We need to be able to adapt, take in context, and even apply empathy to situations. In short, we need to allow for human input. But what if someone won't accept that? They won't accept a rule as unfair or shouldn't apply to this situation. Following the rules is a good thing, but if you're in a position of authority and you can't make judgment calls, then you're no better than a babysitter. The reason this is a sign between medium and very high is because sometimes the people enforcing the rules really aren't in a position to go against them. They're afraid of or under threat of punishment if they make exceptions. In that situation, they are medium. They're buying into and condoning that kind of workplace culture. They might not be rotted, but their situation is. If they are in a position to make exceptions or even consider changing the rules, then they are high. They are so caught up in their own rules that they refuse to change. Wait, did I miss medium? Oh, no, I did medium. Sorry. The rules are absolute. Its judgment is more important than their own. Finally, if they are the person wielding the rules like a weapon, forcing someone else to abide them by or without any leniency or exception, then their corporate brainrot is very high, higher than the people at Boeing are. You have issues. Please seek help. This is unhealthy. But how does this relate to PayPal? A friend of mine is actually engaged in an argument with them right now over a verdict they received on a case they filed. They were paying for a custom order with an independent manufacturer, and the discussions, along with some other signs, were rather suspicious, but it had taken him a long time to find a vendor capable of fulfilling that request, so he pushed through with it. Eventually, they came to an agreement, and he paid them through PayPal, $2,900 USD, roughly $4,000 Canadian. After the money was deposited, they called him and said to send it as friends and family instead, which not only would offer him no purchase protection, but also add a much larger burden on his end financially. So he told them no and demanded a refund. Rookie mistake. After the vendor learned that they were losing him as a customer, they gave him a partial refund, trying to keep $600 USD of it, and that was it. He filed a claim with PayPal to get it back, and they closed in the vendor's favor on the grounds of this decision was made because our records showed that the merchant already issued a credit for this transaction, end quote. The case was about him receiving an incomplete refund in exchange for literally nothing. The merchant refused the payment as a business transaction, and when he refused to send another payment through friends and family, they tried to keep some of it. He called them, and I was actually present for the most recent of these, as he was visiting me at the time he got this latest verdict. Apparently, he called them on 2 separate occasions prior. The first guy said that the case was probably just under the wrong title or whatever, and the second said that their policy states that if the vendor issues a refund, they can't override it, even though the first guy says that there was an appropriate case reasoning, and during their first filing, it also got changed by the reviewers to a different reason. According to this final agent, the reason for the rejection was that the missing $600 was due to fees on the part of the merchant for doing absolutely nothing. It took him an hour, but finally he managed to harness the ultimate Karen energy to get the issue escalated to another separate review team with more managerial authority than the standard team apparently had. He has not heard back from them yet. Number 3, refusing upward mobility. Except for tokens. Brought to you by Cracker Barrel. This one sounds rather ridiculous. I did not think I would be able to find any real-life examples of it. Unfortunately, I did. At Cracker Barrel, the upward mobility and or progression within the company is near non-existent. Yet in spite of that, there are several public organizations referred to as BRGs, business resource groups to identify and train employees of color and other minority groups such as women, neurodiverse individuals, and the LGBT for promotions within Cracker Barrel, as well as an internal DOTA, Diverse Employee Leadership Talent Advancement Program. An existing training program for general employees exists called PAR, Personal Achievement Responsibility, but PAR members still find very stagnated careers. Very few employees who go through that program actually move up, unlike BRG members who move up to existing openings or have job positions created just for them. In July 2025, America First Legal filed complaints with the Tennessee Attorney General and the EEOC, alleging that Cracker Barrel's DEI programs with promotion and hiring advantages based on race, gender, or sexual orientation violate Title VII and state law. In an attempt to circumvent or escape these charges, Cracker Barrel argued that these were not DEI programs, but actually culture and belonging. That is some HR bullshit if I've ever heard it. All of this is a funny contrast to Cracker Barrel's newly implemented policy back in newly implemented. Okay, that's a typo there, but back in 1991, listing that employees who did not exhibit normal heterosexual values were to be fired. While the precise number of fired employees is unknown, as many as 16 people came forward stating they were fired due to their sexual orientation, according to the New Georgia Encyclopedia. So, yeah, there's a link there if you want to check it out. In the early 2000s, customers and employees experienced racial discrimination across over 50 Cracker Barrel locations in the Southeast, such as segregated and delayed seating, refusal to serve black patrons, and biased treatment towards complaints. They settled for $88,700,000 in a class action lawsuit. This kind of behavior could reach a higher benchmark on the Brainrot scale based on the damage it does to the company. However, this is largely a political issue. Maybe I'll make a political Brainrot presentation someday, but that isn't today, and clearly this is just a company tryharding in an attempt to escape its past actions. Next time, make a donation and bury your head in the sand like everyone else. Now, funnily enough, just a couple days ago, Cracker Barrel had a brand new scandal drop that I'd like to discuss, as it represents another great example of corporate brainrot that I couldn't fit into here. But as number 20 was left incomplete, this can take number 20's place. Number 20, forced modernization of logos. Brought to you by Cracker Barrel's new logo. They went from this to this. Before, after. Classic, beautiful, rustic. Along with, what the fuck is that? I mean, how much more do I need to say? I mean, this new logo is so bad, it's such a downgrade that it's become an actual meme. Companies are so scared of having their own identity and thereby offending someone that they're becoming as bland, forgettable, and uninteresting as possible. It's not exclusive to companies either, actually. If anyone remembers the controversy about the CIA's YouTube video pushing their diversity, it didn't stop there. Hold on while I'm going to pull this up. Never mind. They also redid their logo, which is now a boring black stamp. Sean Head did a great video discussing the controversy and also pointed out the logo change in her video. I'll grab that right now and link it to you guys in the chat. So if anyone wants to check that out, please feel free because she does great stuff and it's a great video. It's honestly ridiculous. I mean, it's not even that they're bad logos. I'd compare them to John Anime with the generic, samey looking protagonists. But a lot of these companies had unique, memorable logos and identities, then paid researchers and HR teams to find the most sickeningly generic yellow blob they could find. This is corporate brain rot at its core. Identity is bad, assimilation is good. Companies spend hundreds of millions every year to stand out through advertising, put their faces everywhere to indoctrinate themselves into the back of everyone's minds, yet this is what they want their faces to be. What else could he call this except for brain rot? Discrimination is A-okay if they can't prove it. Brought to you by, wait for it. I hope we can all agree that discriminating against people is bad. Discriminating against people for their race, gender, religious belief, political views, and so on is something we are all taught not to do as children. Hopefully. But whatever happens when you're applying for an apartment, a job, or a promotion, and despite your qualifications or recommendations, you are never going to be considered for it. They were just wasting your time. However bad all this might be, religion, political views, and sexuality, however easy some might make it to tell, are a lot harder to view than something as simple as your race and gender. Discriminating against these would be stupid, right? Oh, it's also a crime in case you didn't know. So we're going to talk about Disney yet again. There are several notable examples to pull from in Disney's discrimination suits, but I'd like to focus on the story of Robert Steffen, who is currently in an active lawsuit against Disney over being rejected for a promotion for being a, quote, another old white guy, end quote. Robert Stevens served as CFO and later co-president of Marvel from 2015 through to 2023. In February 2022, he was in consideration for president of Disney for consumer products. All of it. It was a would be a substantial promotion. According to Steffen's lawsuit filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, then Marvel CEO Ike Perlmutter relayed that Disney CEO Bob Chapek blocked his promotion on the basis that the company, quote, couldn't promote another old white guy, end quote. And Twitter users cheered everywhere. The role went to a woman by the name of Tasia Filipatos, a woman of color. Could you guess from that name? She still serves the role to this day, and she seems like a nice enough lady. No scandals so far, no hate posting that I saw. I wish her the best. It is worth noting that Robert is only 44 while Tasia is 53 and had served as the vice president of that division for 4 years prior. So while it is very easy to believe that Disney would reject him on the basis of him being an old white guy, especially after the Michael Giordano scandal, another Disney executive who claimed he was told he was rejected because, quote, they're not considering any white males for the job, end quote, by a friend in that department. All in all, take my reporting with a grain of salt. I don't know any of this for certain. I don't work at Disney. Disney, if you're hiring, hit me up. As long as you offer me a raise. Does anybody have any questions this time? Feel free to let me know. Ask them now. Also, Rick, thank you for standing in as moderator right now. That you're being a big help for the absolutely zero chat messages we've been receiving. And thank you to Zanman02 on the Twitch end. We did actually get a message from a bot there, so yeah, thank you for reporting that. Next time, block him. Anyways, do we have any questions? No? Okay. 19 through 31 done. Wait, 31. Yeah, no, 31. That was 31. Okay, number 32. Employees are objects when beneath you and numbers when you don't oversee them. Cutting down on wasteful expenses and unnecessary employees is a good thing in a company. You shouldn't have anyone there that does not serve a purpose. Leeches are not a good thing. At least so I'm told. I've told they're bad for your health. Firing entirely profitable studios to cut yourself a bigger bonus is evil. Bankrupting thousands of individuals and hundreds of families without cause is completely unjustifiable. The only causes behind such egregious decision would be either narcissism and sociopathy, or corporate brain rot in the form of identifying people as numbers and objects. You could argue both are the same thing. I'm too tired to debate you. My mouth is on fire. Let's move on. Number 33, the customer is always stupid. Brought to you by Scopely. While a person or company should never be afraid to speak up for themselves or be frustrated when dealing with a genuinely stupid and obnoxious individual, it is a whole level of stupid to go out and tell them that to their face or on interview. However, stupidity and ignorance do not equate to corporate brain rot. The real symptom here lies in coming to believe that your audience will buy, consume, and believe anything that you sell, tell, and give them. Now, I was going to base this off of the movie industry, but surprisingly, I couldn't find any leaks, interviews, or anything else that has them definitively saying that. I looked for at least 2 solid hours. I have some unverified statements from people online claiming to have worked for movie executives and or producers, and they say that they think their audience or the public is stupid, but those are unverified and don't name any specific companies. Then I remembered a story I heard a couple years back about a certain whale, and I figured I would try to verify it. Can you tell how tired I was? The amount of time I spent tracking down and trying to verify this with such little information is stupid. After a whole day of searching, I still didn't have any concrete examples or references. Just a whole lot of chatter about how a mysterious whale named Tadano Mac, who's worth billions of dollars, got upset at Scopely, the developers of a dead game I played for 3 months forever ago. Something they said or did. I found a parody of an apology video, one guy claiming Asmongold talked about it, so I watched his 20-minute video waiting for him to bring that up and go into more detail about why it happened, since this guy's apparently very involved in the community. It finally came up and he says, oh yeah, and Asmongold talked about this apparently. That's cool. Fucker, you name dropped this dude in the title. You put him on the cover picture. Right here. Right. Yeah, I was very tired and angry when I wrote this. I stand by it. I stand by that crash out. So unfortunately, I've got nothing. If anyone wants to do a react on this for me and summarize the situation more clearly, go ahead, please. But in my attempts to find anything to bring more context to this, I found lots of behaviors and discussions about Scopely as a company that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt they deserve to be the face of this symptom. And their financial performance over the past year second that too. Scopely, I deem you terminally brain-rotted. 33.5, an honorable mention brought to you by Incel Games. Aptly named. I mean, I could not resist the urge to put them into this presentation with a name like Incel Games. This doesn't entirely apply to this symptom, but I found this in my research, and I had to use it. Reports suggest that the CEO of this small company pressured their employees to purchase and post fake reviews for their games to promote them, threatening them with the losses of their jobs if they did not comply. Also, Samsung. Please go check out Luis Rossman's great video entailing everything that they've done in the past and what they did to make me tack this on so quickly. I will post that. And let me just forward that to my moderators. Rick, here you go. And Zenman02. Okay, there you go. Okay, those are in? Okay, those are in. Good. All right, please go check him out after this. Very good guy, very, very well spoken. A lot of respect for Louis Rossmann. Number 34, Bureaucracy is King, brought to you by Metrolinx. Oh, this is going to be a fun one. This one may not have been one of the worst, but it was by far took me the longest. Bureaucracy and more oversight is not the answer to every problem. It slows things down to a halt, making it difficult to get anything done in a timely manner, but also impossible to accomplish any meaningful improvements within a company. There are probably much better examples of companies with too much oversight, but those are hard to source. They aren't scandals, they aren't included in any investor and expense reports, at least not without spending days analyzing each company one at a time, identifying problem areas using speculation, which would be, ironically, inefficient. So I'm naming this company through employee complaints. Not the most verifiable source, but if you have enough reports stating the same issue with a singular company, it becomes less and less likely they're making it all up. I won't name any names, but you can go find some on your own online with enough searching. Some of these complaints have been shortened to their key points for efficiency's sake. Heavy and often unnecessary use of external consultants. Bureaucracy can slow progress and decision-making. Some departments suffer from unclear direction and overlapping responsibilities. Nepotism. Directors and managers are hired not based on qualifications. Upper management lacks common sense. Company is incapable of retaining talent. Senior executives openly badmouth employees. Decision paralysis, favoritism is rampant. Work moves at a snail's pace. Meetings about nothing that never gets done. Lots of layers. Metrolinx is their own middleman. Hire out all the key activities while internal staff seemed bogged down in bureaucracy and inefficiency. 30-person meetings where only 2 stakeholders are talking and less than half need to attend. Another meeting is needed to decide on something with nominal impact. Metrolinx seems to have a lot of issues internally. I have seen many more stories, complaints, and reports than what was listed here. For every one issue listed, there are at least 2 more independently confirming it in their own posts. Whether the problem is their own self-delusion or laziness about fixing the issues or their attempts to justify their own salaries can't be stated. They are both equally likely scenarios. You don't have to live like this. Get help. Number 35. The lower class does not exist, even though we systematically oppress our employees to keep them in it. This is a sentiment held by many but spoken by few. This was in the top 5 of the most difficult blame to assign. I spent many nights awake trying to figure someone out. Many blue light headaches were suffered trying to find somebody to point the finger at. I tried so hard to find one more bridge to burn, one more company to piss off. There were individuals that fit the bill, but they didn't economically oppress anyone because they were so insignificant. Ugh, Jesus. Oh, God. Sorry for that jump scare. And, yeah, this guy too. Yeah, so... yeah, this was a fun conversation to have. The problem is finding an executive so brain-rotted to speak up about feeling that way is a Herculean task. I even took to ChatGPT to try and search the internet in hopes of finding some obscure incident where maybe it was implied. It didn't work. I give up. Let's move on. Number 36. Ageism is key. Brought to you by BioWare. Young, inexperienced workers are cheap. Saving money is more important to these companies that they would replace their most valuable employees with workers that, while they may try their best, lack the experience, training, and ingenuity to just maintain a website, much less write and design new ones. I've heard stories quoting that exact scenario. This also applies to game development and the makers of Dragon Age: The Veilguard, BioWare, who hired modders for The Sim to work on the game. I'm unaware of the extent that they worked on the game, but I've heard reports of them doing character design, animation, and even the game design. These are people who are modders on The Sims, one of the most basic, generic, easy games to work with on the planet. And they're making a brand new AAA game. AAA means very expensive. We have the opposite when it comes to politics. Young people with new ideas, perspectives, and understanding of how the world works are pushed or kept out financially and from many of the political parties unless they have connections. One great example would be a city where, two cities actually, where there were younger mayors that took over the previous ones, and in a month, or was it a month or 2 years? Doesn't matter. Anyways, they started doing the most basic of tasks, and it drastically dropped all the issues within the community. Crime went down, survivability went up, the economy improved, all of it. 37. Never listen to young employees, even more than you usually don't. Brought to you by KFC. Surprising sponsor here. The symptom is not really corporate brain rot on its own. 9 times out of 10, it would just argue it's a self-aggrandizing asshole who refuses to believe that anyone younger than them is stupid and doesn't know what they are doing. Oh wait, my bad. That does believe that anyone younger than them is stupid and doesn't know what they're doing. Kind of a contradiction there in my statement. But for that 10% of the time that it is a symptom, it manifests itself rather oddly. This symptom comes out whenever a superior or senior employee feels threatened by a new hire. What this leads to is what is officially called dymatic behavior, or some other people might call it, I have a tiny penis syndrome. This is a close cousin of number 29. The idea is when someone new comes in, most of the time young, and catches the attention of your superior, or is well liked by a customer or client that you favor, and instead of getting frustrated that they're doing better than you, in general, you get upset over seniority. It manifests as a sense of entitlement over the fact that you have been there at the company longer than they have, so how dare they do better than you? How dare the clients and customers like their service better? Basically, take nice guy syndrome and convert the girl into a company. Yeah, you've been there longer, but clearly the company doesn't like your work. Studies done by the BBC confirm that this kind of treatment is very common. Young professionals have often faced dismissive attitudes and undermined credibility, despite their competence. End quote. 23-year-old Leia had her efficiency improvements shot down and rejected repeatedly, and was mocked behind her back by her older coworkers. She worked at a business development team at a tech company. She reported that almost the entire of the staff were roughly twice her age. She tried to make a good impression on them by showing enthusiasm and making suggestions on how to optimize the workplace. Rookie mistake. Never, ever mess with an old guy's or girl's sense of superiority. Coming in there and making a bunch of new suggestions is a rookie mistake. I know from experience, I was a rookie once. Quote, I exhibited too much ambition in the eyes of my superiors, end quote, she says. Quote, I heard about comments being made behind my back. There were a couple of times when my superiors referred to my age right in front of me saying I was too young. Subquote, what does a 23-year-old know about these things? End quote on both parts. Quote, older workers have always had negative leaning opinions about the young, end quote. But the ageism today's millennial and Gen Z workers are facing, North believes, is more acute and derives from pervasive perceptions that they are entitled, lazy radicals. In this case, he says, it's not just a life stage critique. This is something more extreme, end quote. KFC is a good example of this, is as good of an example of this as I could find, at the very least in terms of standard discrimination, with bits of superiors with corporate brain rot inferiority complex mixed in. A study of over 3,000 workers between the ages of 16 to 25 found over 95% felt negatively treated due to age, 81% felt undervalued, 78% experienced patronization, 69% lost out on promotions, and 75% were outright rejected because of their age. Number 38. If a market isn't at 90% profit rate or higher, you're not monetizing it enough. Brought to you by Apollo Global. The pursuit of ludicrous amounts of monetization has destroyed a lot of companies and industries. The reason for this is that it can alienate much of the customer base and involves risky investments or possibly illegal corner cutting. A not so great example of this would be the American healthcare industry, which is where Apollo Global comes in. Apollo Global Management owns the most hospitals and hospital-adjacent industries in the world. Each time a hospital becomes publicly owned, it is followed by deep price gouging, slashed hours, and reduced staff, but orders to increase in patient intake, which leads to much worse customer care and often far more reluctant to go to see a doctor when something happens to them. While I don't have any reports connecting them specifically to these examples, I could probably find some with enough searching, but was too tired to do that and didn't want to have to read 100 more articles or videos, making this even more depressing. Instead, here's a list of scandals they've been involved in. The Apollo management scandal encompasses several issues, including the fraudulent charging of personal expenses to investors and allegations of sexual misconduct against founder Leon Black. These incidents have led to investigations, legal actions, and changes in leadership within the firm. Number 30. This is supposed to be number 39, always invest in buzzwords, brought to you by EA. Investing in buzzwords instead of actual tangible evidence is irresponsible, insane, but above all else, it's cringe. EA has spoken up many times about all kinds of buzzwords and said that they believe in them to be the future of their industry. Everything from the blockchain, AI, and even NFTs. Can a single person in this chat explain what a blockchain or an NFT is? I'm going to assume not and move on, but if somebody says something, I'll skip ahead. These words might look good to investors who are, and to quote Robert Downey Jr., the most obnoxious group of money-hungry, low IQ, high-energy, jackrabbit, fucking wannabe, big-time, small-time, shit-talking, bothersome, irritating bunch of motherfuckers I have ever had to endure for more than 5 minutes. And I love this dude for that. I did not think I could respect this guy anymore, but as soon as I saw that, I so much more respect for that dude. 70% of these morons have no idea what you are talking about, nor do they care. Just as long as it sounds good. These financially inflated dumbasses have gone bankrupt more times than I can count, and I can count a lot. I mean, I made up to 2,000 before. And received bailouts in the last half century alone that can be rounded to $1 trillion from more than just economic crashes and the Great Depression. The risk of investing or even associating with these things goes beyond PR choices. Outside of AI, none of these industries have had more than 1 or 2 cases of notable reliability in the long term. Most crypto and NFT success stories were scams. And a company that can't get a football game's AI to work shouldn't be investing in it on a broader scale. It is my personal guarantee that nobody at EA understands how blockchains work, what an NFT is, or how to properly sustain cryptocurrency. And they sure as hell aren't making any advancements in AI because that would cost time and money. Number 40, if you can't integrate these buzzwords into your business, talk about them anyway. The ranking of this symptom is an exception, an extension of the previous entry. While simply talking up and promoting these things will not harm your company in any feasible way, which would normally make it exempt from this higher ranking, the desperation to be associated with these despite not actually being involved in it in any way signifies a much deeper form of rot than bad investments. If you had a friend or just knew someone in general that would immediately align themselves with whatever the new big thing was, how do you feel about them? Whether it was a cultural movement, an actor, economics, politics, or just a news show, they always made an effort to immediately jump into the fray and get involved, making it a part of their identity regardless of how much they knew about it. What would you say about their intelligence? Their ability to think freely or make important choices would be virtually non-existent. Who could ever argue that someone like that should be in charge of anything? All right, we're 80% done. We're almost done. Wow, and half the time I expected to be too. Nice. I hope I'm not overwhelming anybody right now. Number 41, self-preservation and for the greater good are economic fallacies. This is going to get very bleak very quick. Brought to you by ExxonMobil. These principles should always be ignored or stomped out. Profit first, golden parachute later. ExxonMobil is among the top 5 biggest contributors to climate destruction every year, accounting for 3 to 4% of global industrial greenhouse gas emissions since 1965. Emphasis on industrial, as that means that it is not accounting for further damage that comes later from car and aviation fuel pollution, nor their oil spills. Exxon, before the Exxon and Mobil merger, even knew about climate change since the 70s. In 1977, head scientist at Exxon, James Black, gave the executives a full presentation about how the most likely manner in which mankind is influencing the global climate is through carbon dioxide releases from burning of fossil fuels. There's a PDF link here if you want to check that out for yourself. I'm not going to have that link to you guys. You can look it up yourself really easily. Just look up James Black climate change presentation on Google. It'll be the first result. Exxon knew about... following that presentation in 1978, Exxon headed up an experiment on, quote, internal climate modeling, end quote. A private experiment done by companies and organizations to simulate environmental damage in the future and make predictions. To their credit, they invested and wasted no expense in cutting-edge climate modeling, and the top physicists and oceanographers in the world to study carbon dioxide buildup and warming trends. They ran predictions up to the year 2100 within a small margin of today's results. Oh, okay, that's a duplicate slide, okay. They hired physicists and oceanographers in 1978 to verify this by studying carbon dioxide. The experiment finished in 1982 and advised management that CO2 emissions from fossil fuels posed a serious threat, warned of potentially catastrophic warming by mid-21st century, recommended action to limit fossil fuel use to avoid environmental damage, discussed transitioning energy systems to mitigate threat, and unsurprisingly, in the face of this information, Exxon moved to misinformation. Which brings us back to number 19. Who's excited about this one? Number 19, come 41, convenience is a better truth than reality, comes self-preservation, and for the greater good are economic fallacies, brought to you by ExxonMobil. They started by cutting funding to the research division in the late 1980s, then started publicly questioning climate change and arguing against regulations. They followed this up by becoming a, quote, key funder, end quote, of many top climate denial groups like the Global Climate Coalition, the Heartland Institute, Competitive Enterprise Institute, and others. Emphasized the uncertainty in scientific conclusions from an internal Exxon memo leak. Peer review analysis of 32 internal climate projections by Exxon from 1977 to 2003 found that Exxon models were highly accurate, with projections matching modern IPCC standards or estimates. Thankfully, Exxon is finally being called out for their crap. Starting in 2015, an avalanche of legal and congressional suits started. Several American states, including New York and Massachusetts, launched investigations into the company for fraudulent misrepresentation of climate risks. Congress got involved in 2019, and in 2023 and 2024, international lawsuits and campaigns were launched and escalated against the company. Historical precedence has shown that nothing will happen, but maybe this time it will be different. It would do a lot if it was. 42. A culture is a dollar sign, especially if you don't understand it. Brought to you by Ubisoft. This is a particularly bad viewpoint. Morally, I'd like to put it higher because of how obnoxious it is to see the world this way, but the key cause behind it is ignorance and not brain rot. The rot just accelerates it into making these kinds of bad decisions. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a perfect example of this. A rich culture disgustingly monetized for profit. It wasn't out of a disgusting self-aggrandizing attempt to virtue signal. It was solely profit. Perfectly represented by the merchandise they tried to use to sell the game. Like the cheap fans bought off of Amazon and Zoro from One Piece's sword being sold as Yasuke's sword, and using the bombing of Nagasaki as promotional merch. There's, of course, the egregious monetization within the game as well, using AR artwork of Japanese artifacts and even for the microtransactions. And, of course, all the Chinese elements they put into the game. It could be forgiven if it was one, maybe even two things. But the total? Number 1, they put the Buddhist statues. Number 2, square tatami mats. Number 3, Chinese architecture and building designs. Same issue at some shrine setups. Number 4, rice harvest and farming traditions more akin to Myanmar or Thailand than Japan. Number 5, watermelons. Number 6, the dragons. Well, I cannot verify the dragon detail with imagery because I can't find any online, and I'm not sitting through hundreds of hours of AC Shadows gameplay, hoping to find a good frame with dragon artwork on the wall. However, I did look into the differences between Chinese and Japanese dragons designs, and if my memory is correct, which I was, and very likely correct in my suspicions of it, but open to be wrong, which is why it's last on the list. And of course, so the total, 6 with an asterisk, because the dragons is a maybe. On top of not being able to spell the characters' names correctly, constantly appropriating Japanese artifacts, shrines, and even organizations without permission, disparaging the name of a famous female in Japanese history, known for her devotion to her husband by having her cheat on him in the game, and much, much more, they mistook Japan for China and other Eastern Asian cultures on 6 occasions. And all 6 of those examples were not one instance, but littered throughout the game, especially in the architecture. Their Shotokan cultural advisor should be ashamed. Number 43, short-term profits are king, brought to you by Radio Shack. Radio Shack was huge the 1970s to the 1990s. Y2K was real for them. Starting in the 2000s, they rapidly declined. They invested everything they had into their mobile phone sales. They had contracts with companies like Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T, where the company would get commissions for each plan they sold. They neglected everything else, like brand image and all of their other products. To paraphrase customer sentiments, a lot of people couldn't tell if they were a phone store or a toy store or a tech store. Predictably, phone competition began to quickly decline, and so the benefits they were offered to sell the phones plummeted. Without those and no foot to stand on anywhere else in the company, it quickly fell apart. During their golden era, they focused on adding more stores and boosting quarterly sales than investing in e-commerce, even in the face of foot traffic dropping by over 60%, which is stupid but not corporate brain rot. Maybe number 48. Their short-term focus on phone sales, whilst refusing to build up the rest of their company or adapt to modern change, investing everything they had into a failing business model, led to their bankruptcy in 2015, then another in 2017 when they tried to relaunch the brand. Number 44, children are money. Get to them early, use them up, ruin them, toss them aside. Brought to you by Hollywood and every child trafficking ring. Children are valuable. Whether you're talking about our future or in terms of labor, everything from labor to acting, sweatshops are used for a reason. But the difference between sweatshops and Hollywood is that sweatshops don't put in the effort to make you kill yourself once they don't want you anymore. Talented child actors are rare and a valuable commodity. They're cheap, bring in a lot of attention, and quickly become public favorites. But the problem with that is that they have a whole life ahead of them, where they can get more expensive as they grow older. Take a look at Robert Downey Jr. He just got an $80 million contract for Avengers Doomsday. And with them being so popular, you can't just tell them, or you can't just shut them out for growing up and or being too expensive. It looks bad for the studios. So what's the solution to this problem? How do you get such popular icons out of the spotlight? Drugs. There were numerous counts of former drug-addicted actors and actresses talking about how they originally got drugs from their agents, managers, someone from the director's team, or other executives at parties. Not including the testimonies, there's no denying the pattern either, expertly highlighted by the Family Guy episode, The Peanut Butter Kid. While I wanted to play a clip of it, I can't find one online. In this episode, Stewie ends up becoming a child actor. However, after Brian starts noticing the effect it starts to have on him, he talks to him about what his life is going to become, using the fates of other child actors as an example. He shows Stewie about how each one of them wound up becoming addicts, turned to pornography, or died of an overdose. The only child actor I know of today that hasn't died or fallen from grace is Robert Downey Jr., and he did fall. He became a huge addict, got arrested, and fell off the face of the earth for a few years before going into rehab and resurfacing as Tony Stark. Judy Garland, the original actress of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, was given amphetamines at the age of 10 by MGM. She was a long time ago, but she's also one of the only ones to speak up in such detail about her abuse. Jeanette McCurdy spoke up about how her producer pushed her to start drinking, and when she refused, was made to sign an NDA for $300,000, which is why we don't have a name on the person, which is probably a common reason why we don't have more names. The abuse of young actors isn't a surprise to anybody, but no industry in the world abuses them like Hollywood does. Sweatshops exploit them, Hollywood kills them, or at least tries to drive them to killing themselves. It is an unfortunate reality that's been going on for 100 years, and won't be changing anytime soon. Number 45, maternity leave is a scam, brought to you by Abbott. Now, the sentiment behind this is largely about giving employees benefits as a whole, but we are going to be strictly arguing the part of maternity leave for this one. The strangest argument I've ever heard against paid maternity leave has to come from Abbott. Truly just a wild take, but first let's talk about maternity leave as a whole. honestly, this one is going to be funny. Please, I thought this would be good follow up after the Hollywood incident or discussion. There are many arguments to be made for or against maternity leave. Whether you support it or not, it can be a liability. However, the roles that demand a higher degree of training and experience, like at Google, have found it to be an excellent investment as it raised employee retention with a minimal impact on productivity. Frankly, not wanting to fund it from a business perspective is not unreasonable, regardless of the alleged discrimination behind it. Personally, I'm for it. Children are important to society and it is a long-term investment. I don't want to get into social politics on day one. Cancellation is more of a second date activity anyway. Abbott has a rather unhinged take on maternity leave. Them, Nestle, and Reckitt united. Although Abbott funded 79.4% of the lobbying with nearly $45 million, with Nestle, Reckitt, and 3 more making up the rest for a total of more than 184. Abbott argued if you gave employees maternity leave, it would impact formula sales. I will pause for a moment to let you think about that, to let that sink in. Forget the financial burden, the scheduling logistics, or even the fairness to other employees who don't have families or children. No! The real villainy behind paid maternity leave is that women won't need to buy as much formula as they usually would because they can stay at home to breastfeed. Because it's not like, and I can't believe I have to say this, breast pumps exist. Fuck it, I'm dropping this. Let's go back to numbers. Let's start with the arguments for maternity leave. These will be formatted differently. Increased employee retention and reduced turnover costs. Turnover is expensive. Replacing an employee costs an average of 21% of their annual salary. Center for American Progress. For a $50,000 a year job, that's $10,500 per lost employee. Retention improves with paid leave. A Rutgers Columbia study found that women offered paid maternity leave were 93% more likely to return to the same employer. California's paid leave policy led to a 10 to 17% increase in labor force participation for new mothers, according to CEPR 2011. Productivity impact. Google increased paid maternity leave from 12 to 18 weeks and saw a 50% drop in attrition among new mothers. Harvard Business Review 2013. The cost of leave was offset by reduced hiring, training costs, and continuity in workflow. ROI, a study by PwC in Australia, shows that for every $1 spent on paid parental leave, companies could expect a $1.91 in return via retention and productivity gains. Now for the bad. Financial strain and productivity disruption for small businesses. Direct costs. In countries with employer-funded leave, e.g. the U.S. have not publicly subsidized, small to medium businesses, SMBs, may pay up to 100% of salary during leave, plus temporary replacement wages, training costs, lost output, or project delays. Operational challenge. According to the NFIB, National Federation of Independent Businesses, 38% of small businesses cited paid family leave as a significant cost burden that could lead to reduced hours, hiring freezes, and increased prices. Unequal burden. A U.S. Chamber of Commerce analysis suggested that universal mandates without federal subsidy would place disproportionate cost pressure on employers with fewer than 50 employees who already struggle with liquidity, and reduce competitiveness in industries with tight margins, e.g. retail and hospitality. Mandatory leave could push employers to automate or offshore roles. There we go. We're done. Let's leave this landmine. Number 46. Unions are evil. Brought to you by Smithfield. Unions are frustrating to deal with as a business owner. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. So I was going to put this in the medium, but on further reflection, if you are running a company where your employees feel the need to unionize against you, then you are probably already doing several things wrong. So I upgraded it to high. As already stated, there is no real investigation to be made about why companies don't like unions. They demand more money and benefits and organize strikes if you don't negotiate with them. On top of being protected by all 50 states and Canada, even if not all state and provincial protections are equal. Number 47, union busting is not a game. It is a life or death sport. Also brought to you by Smithfield. The disparity between hating unions and union busting is large, especially when you get into the 1900s, where methods included by spying, blacklisting, violence, and even assassination on occasion. Modern day union busting is a little different now, but can still reach their own extremes. Leaked documents insider reports suggest algorithms were used to predict union risk by location and employee behavior. There was racial division in the hiring and placement among the hires, with blacks going to the, quote, kill floor, end quote, and Latinos going to, quote, other departments, end quote, to undermine solidarity, according to testimony from former supervisor Sherry Buffkin. Smithfield promoted divisions among workers by alternating between hiring practices that favor African American or Latino workers in order to foster animosity between them on the basis of their nationality. I wonder if a parallel could be drawn here with companies and the Democratic and Republican Party, or men and women, or gays and non-gays. No, that's a crazy delusion. On top of simply firing anybody who they suspected of supporting unionization. Finally, ignoring a lot of other things, they weaponized ICE against plants who were organizing union. This is not a skit from Superstore, this is real. In 2007, a raid was conducted at the Tar Heel plant, arresting 21 Hispanic workers. According to union organizers, they received repeated threats of deportation from supervisors if they supported it. Number 48, non-union problems should always be ignored, brought to you by Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers, allegedly, based on my own personal analysis of the situation, knew that the company was going to go bankrupt roughly 1 year before it crashed in September 2008. By that point, they had accumulated an estimated $85 billion in toxic assets and mortgages, plus another $606 billion in other assets and liabilities, adding up to a total of $691 billion. Most assessments of their financial situation will state a total of $619 billion of debt. That is accurate, but the $85 billion of toxic mortgages were high-risk, illiquid, and illiquidable, which was the debt that truly sank the ship and bankrupted the company beyond saving. The reason Lehman Brothers made it onto this list is their fiscal behavior during the collapse. After realizing they had invested so much into these bad assets in attempts to make quick profits, they instead kept funneling money into them, rapidly accelerating the issue instead of addressing it. They did this to make back some of their lost money, but permanently lost a lot more in the process. After doing so, they began cutting themselves egregious bonuses in the face of record losses at the end of the year and started doubling down on their luxurious lifestyles on the company card, knowing it wouldn't exist soon anymore anyways. By the time the shareholders caught on to what was going on and the company had to be dismantled, CEO Richard Fuld got over $500 million and gave many handsome bonuses and severance packages to his senior leaders and members of the board as well. This situation served as a blueprint for many, many private equity firms and other executives on how to fully profit off of a sinking ship and or dismantle a company from the inside out for a quick buck. Like what private equity firms did to Toys R Us. Make bad, irreversible investments for quick returns, leverage the entirety of your company for multiple loans, then funnel as much as that money, over 50% if you can get away with it, to yourself and your execs to buy their silence through incremental bonuses. Even as Mr. Fuld was pleading with Secretary Paulson for federal rescue, Lehman continued to squander millions on executive compensation. Mr. Fuld depleted Lehman's capital reserves by over $10 billion through year-end bonuses, stock buybacks, and dividend payments. Number 49, the less a person understands their job, the better. This is going to be a long one. Brought to you by Obsidian Entertainment. Carrie Patel. Need I say more? Carrie Patel had no field in her position, had no experience in her field or position as game director. To demonstrate this, I shall be boring following Sungrand Studios, aka Jarrell Doulay's example. Here is his video. Okay, can you guys send this in? I still have no idea how to do this. Are you good? Good, okay. Todd Howard, a controversial figure in the games industry, had a solid resume before taking on his first role as game director, Fallout 3. Yeah, we're good. Production, design edition, yeah. For the production, he was on Terminator, Future Shock, and Skynet. For design and additional design, Terminator, Future Shock, Skynet, Elder Scrolls 2, Daggerfall, Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard. For project leader, Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, Elder Scrolls Morrowind. For executive producer, Elder Scrolls Blood Moon, Shadowkey, Oblivion, and Shivering Isles. He did all of these over the course of 12 years. Then released Fallout 3 in 2008. What did Carrie Patel's resume look like? Outer Worlds 2019, writer. Outer Worlds Peril on Gorgon 2020 DLC, writer. Pillars of Eternity and DLC 2015 through 18, writer. Pillars of Eternity. Oh, and then Avowed 2025, game director. This was a very incredible opportunity for Carrie, basically 2 jobs in a decade. One in 2015 through 2018, a second in 2019 and 2020, she was basically legacied into after working on the original. Then her next job is in 2025, 9 years in total without work, then receives a massive career promotion with Avowed. So what exactly did she do with this incredible opportunity? What did she accomplish? How did she behave? And how did she promote the game? This is Carrie Patel's behavior and accomplishments. She was calm, clear, and consistent on many different interviews. She did not use AI for writing. She pushed that narrative a lot. I wonder if that has anything to do with her being a writer. She changed the game style from Skyrim to Outer World, her own game. Yeah, the original game was supposed to imitate Skyrim. And she changed the game world from Skyrim to Pillars of Eternity's Aeora. She was honest, she did not lie, overpromise, or exaggerate. Then she left Obsidian Entertainment to go be a game director at Netflix. Obsidian Entertainment gambled everything on Carrie Patel, a no-name writer, to direct their next huge game, Avowed. Then she left Obsidian to go be a game director for Netflix's games. Wait, what? Oh, okay. Wait. Oh, there we go. She did seem to try her best to remain professional, which is commendable. I also do not blame her for taking the opportunity. Anybody would. It was Obsidian's fault for giving it to her. She took the experience and the paycheck, then jumped ship. Number 50. We finally made it. Never take accountability. Brought to you by Kenneth Lay. If you're ever forced to apologize, make sure not to take it to heart. And make sure to make it clear to the world you resent doing so and as fake as possible. Then use it as a learning experience on how to avoid taking it in the future. This is the mindset of CEO visionary Kenneth Lay. He wouldn't fit in this title card. We will have to go into detail about his rise and fall to truly understand this specimen. Let's start with his highs. Lay was a major proponent of energy market deregulation, lobbying hard in the 1980s and 1990s. Enron benefited from his political connections, especially to the Bush family and GOP lawmakers, to secure favorable policy conditions. He helped transform Enron from a pipeline company into a virtual energy trading giant. Now we move on to how he ran the company during his first stint as CEO. He immediately falls for the 43rd fallacy of prioritizing short-term gains over company sustainability. Number 7, encouraging extreme risk-taking, inflated egos, and harsh competitiveness. They frequently engaged in investments that could have bankrupted the company. And strong delegation without oversight. Not brainrot, but a large oversight as well. He stepped down as CEO but remained chairman of the board in February of 2001. Publicly, this was presented as a succession, although it was most likely that the board of directors was unhappy with the many problems Lay's corporate culture had nurtured and didn't trust his reports. His friend and subordinate Jeffrey Skilling took over as CEO. In August of 2001, Skilling resigned without explanation, which put Kenneth Lay back in charge. 7 months. Kenneth Lay's second stint as CEO. Number 23, outwardly lied to investors, shareholders, the press, and employees about the accounting and stability of the company. He investigated the company and found no wrongdoing. Good for him. Truly good for this guy. I'm proud of him. Told employees to buy Enron stock in order to boost its numbers, like 33.5. He did not change anything internally. They filed for bankruptcy in December of 2001. Lay was permanently ousted and federal investigations began. So, here were his charges. Conspiracy to commit securities fraud? Guilty. Wire fraud on multiple counts? Guilty. Banking fraud? Guilty. Making false and misleading statements to investors, employees, and auditors, also known as number 23. Guilty. Securities fraud. This is a separate charge. Guilty. In a separate case, he was facing even more banking fraud charges. Banking fraud again. Guilty. Making false statements in banking applications. Guilty. Making false statements to obtain credit. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Guilty. In totality, he was faced with 10 individual charges and found guilty on all of them. The verdict was given in 2006 and he faced 45 years in prison at 64 years old. 6 weeks after the verdict, Kenneth Lay died on vacation in Aspen of a heart attack. I'm not sure why he was allowed to go to Aspen after receiving so many guilty verdicts, but I guess he was. He did not serve a day in prison. He avoided accountability until the day he died. So here are some honorable mentions, all of which are true stories. Showing up to an employee's house because you didn't think they were actually sick and were just too lazy to drive to work. This happened to my friend Trevor. Timing employee bathroom breaks. Forcing employees to work excessive quantities of overtime, then penalizing them for working too much overtime. Splurging tens of thousands to millions of dollars on events for management every year and cutting costs to employee benefits to make up the difference. Holding fake job interviews to advertise your product and services. This one happened to me personally. I went through that. I was very angry. Refusing to pay life insurance to a man's family that had a 700-pound steel beam dropped on him because he wasn't wearing his hard hat. Trying to screw over an employee out of severance by telling them, I accept your resignation over and over again because you had to pay people off or lay people off. Thankfully, that did not work out for them. So, that was my corporate brainrot presentation. Thank you all for tuning in for all 2 hours, 39 minutes of it. I would just like to go over a few things I'd like to do in the future, if that would be okay with you. For starters, I'd like to do more commentary and reactions, if you couldn't guess based on the process of my God, I'm exhausted. Contents of this debut, the subject of it. I also had an idea for a TLDA series, Too Late Didn't Ask, where I'd cover outdated games, movies, and politics that nobody talks about anymore. I could do these live or in a YouTube video series, whichever you prefer. I could provide general commentary from crowd chats and submissions, pretty typical thing. And movie reviews and analysis, like The Firm. I would love to react and dissect that movie for you guys on stream. I'd also be interested in doing a little bit of gaming, taking requests. I could do casual, difficult, competitive releases. I was planning on doing a Mafia 1 through 3 before Mafia 4 came out, but I thought that was coming out in December. It turns out it was August 8th, so I'm way too late to do that, but I'd still be happy to do that if you were interested. Also send you a sacrifice in Hogwarts Legacy before the sequel comes out. Then some fun stuff like Mario Kart, Dead by Daylight, and Yasuke Simulator. As a reference back to Assassin's Creed Shadows. And then some comedy and skits like impersonation and cosplay streams where I do the whole stream in the style of another big creator like Asmongold, Darkside Phil, Ludwig, Hassan, Emiru. I'd probably have to do Hassan as a subathon or donathon goal so that I don't get banned off of every platform in the world. But, I'll take requests. And, yeah. No, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. All 7 or 8 of you across YouTube and Twitch. Now we're down to 3. But, I had fun doing this. Feel free to forward this to any React creators you'd like. My number one goal is getting the word out about all this. How many pages are we? How many pages is this? 614 slides. I spent over a month and a half doing all of these. Have a seizure, just for fun. But, Okay, I'm just going to scroll back up to number 1 here, just to avoid giving you guys an actual seizure. My name is Regnoy on YouTube and also known as Young Streaming. I'm available on YouTube and Twitch. My next stream will also include Kick as well. For anybody interested in doing that, I had to cut that out because of concerns over UK laws. I didn't want to get sued right out of the gate or kicked off the platform for defamation, even though all this is true. Also, if any of this information is wrong or inaccurate, I spent a month and a half on this. I was as accurate as I could be. Thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to follow. Please like the video on YouTube to help promote it. And I wish you all a good day. Now, how do you raid somebody on Twitch? I'm going to figure that out. Okay, I'm just going to end this. Have a good day. Thank